Well, there we go.
Okay.
Roll that
Yeah,
back.
right.
Let me get back to.
This was the issue I was in presentation.
Recording in progress.
Yes.
All right. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. This is City Council, Monday, June 8th, 2026. Roll call, please.
Darren Miller. Here. Eric Sarine. Jen Mazias.
Here.
Molly Sigler.
Here.
Becca Robleski.
Here.
Don Benson.
Here.
Jared Trimbo.
Here.
Quorum is met.
Thank you. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our next item is approval of minutes from the council meeting on May 11th. Anyone care to make a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes. Second.
Motion by Chair, second by Don. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, approval of monthly expenditures.
Get the motion to approve.
Second. Motion by Darren, second by Becca, to approve the monthly expenditures. Roll call vote, please.
Jared Trimbo.
Yes.
Don Benson.
Yes.
Becca Robleski.
Yes.
Molly Sigler.
Yes.
Jen Mazias.
Yes.
Darren Miller. Yes. It's approved.
Thank you. Next item is public comment. Is anyone here from the public who would like to speak during public comment? Please come forward, state your name and address, and sign in. And we do keep public comment to 3 minutes, and I will set a timer for everyone so that everyone gets equal billing.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christy Yench. I live here in Washburn, and I'm here tonight to bring you up to date on the situation with HR 5497, otherwise known as renaming the Lakeshore Park to a national park, which was presented very suddenly by Congressman Tom Tiffany 2 years ago. And at that time, you may remember that there was more public opposition and outcry to this plan than I have ever heard in the community at large. Washburn wrote a resolution in opposition to it in October of 2024. The county board wrote 3 resolutions, 2 of them with as a joint resolution with Red Cliff. The latest one was signed on March 31st of 2026. Currently, last week, it passed as an amendment to the budget bill in the House, out of the House. So it is now at the Senate, despite a lot of opposition at the time. Senator Baldwin is on the Appropriations Committee. Susan Collins is the head of that committee. Patty Murray is the vice chair. There are several other people I think we could be in touch with, including Gary Peters from Michigan, Dick Durbin out of Illinois. You can only contact him, it looks like, by writing an email through his office. He doesn't offer phone numbers except for local people in an emergent situation. I don't yet know when this bill has been rescheduled, but they are scheduling markups right now. So I would urge everyone in the room and outside of this room to spread the word, and please at least get in touch with Senator Baldwin. She needs to hear from us. She's very aware of what's going on, but she needs numbers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else for public comment?
Hi, my name is Marjorie Diamond Simpson. I live at 939 West Bayfield Street. I have two subjects I'd like to talk about. The first is about the city staffing study. I appreciate the need in a small city to have a round-robin type of structure, so there's always someone available with at least some knowledge of most topics. And with the current revenues, there's a limit to how many people can be on staff. However, the city sorely does need to increase its tax base. And because of that, I think something very important was missed regarding the image projected by city staff. In order to facilitate local development, including attracting outsiders to invest here, I think it's important to have someone on staff with the title Community Development Coordinator or Specialist or whatever. Ideally, that person's duties would be a minimum 75% community development, including zoning. That's ideal. It may not be possible. But that person should not also be the same person whose primary job is to keep the city running smoothly. I really think that for someone coming into town, the image, oh, there's a community development person, point person, that's their title, is very important. Anyway, thank you for listening to my point of view on that. And on the other topic, it would be really nice if the torn flags on city property, including the one right outside of the building here, could be replaced before Flag Day this weekend.
Torn what? Flags.
Flags, American flags.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Anyone else for public comment? I know we had some flags replaced down at Legion Park prior to Memorial Day, but I did notice this one myself as well. I forgot to mention it to Pat. So thank you for that. Anyone online for public comment?
Hello, my name is Don Benson, 934 West Pine Street. Just speaking as a citizen of town. Wanted to share the word that Bayfield County and the Bayfield County Trails are going to be hosting an open house and public information and input session about the long-term trails plan for the area. That'll be June 25th from 5 to 7 in the Annex Building across from the courthouse, and everyone's invited. If you have property that might be near a future trail or a current trail, or if you use trails, if you don't like trails, doesn't matter. Come on through and have a say in what's going on. So there are several flyers back there. They look like this. If anyone's interested in attending, go ahead and grab one. Otherwise, look around. I'll try and put some up around town and other places.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so it looks like it's it for public comment. Anyone else? Last call. All right, we are going to move on to tomorrow announcements and appointments. I would once again like to make my community for all proclamation. I won't read it. It does get to be a little tedious, but I do want to make sure that it is available to everyone. We do post these on the website. This is basically saying that we are an inclusive community and we welcome everyone here, no matter what your point of view is, no matter what ethnicity or race you may be, what gender you may be. We are a community that welcomes you. I do have an announcement for the disaster funding that was mentioned before. We do now have some information on that. There is a press release that has just gone out about this that we'll be posting and or linking to. We'll put it on our website and then link to it on Facebook. And then there's an information sheet, which I have made copies of, and we'll leave some copies on the counter for people of how to apply. The more I learned about it, it does sound like it has to be, damage to your primary residence that had to occur during the big storm that happened a few weeks ago. And for anyone who did have damage to their primary residence with physical storm damage, you can get up to $1,000 from this grant fund. So there's a total amount they're assigning to our city, and it'll be on a first come, first served basis. So anyone who is a homeowner, I forgot I still have the timer going. Anyone who's a homeowner with a mortgage who sustained physical property damage, a homeowner without a mortgage who sustained physical property damage. So if your home is paid off, renters displaced who signed a new lease due to storm damage, bless you, or renters who were evacuated and incurred hotel or Airbnb expenses due to storm damage. So if the home where you live was damaged, it sounds like you'll be able to apply for some funds. So that is exciting. It won't maybe help as many people as I had hoped, but it still will be helpful for those who did have that damage, so there's the information. Let's see, I do have a couple of citizen appointments that I would like to make tonight. One is a reappointment, and that would be Erica Lane to the Parks Committee. I didn't connect with her directly, but my impression is that she would like to be reappointed to the Parks Committee. And then the other one, I'm passing around Mike Robleski to be on the Plan Commission as a citizen member. Mike is a local contractor, and he would be a valuable asset, I think, to Plan Commission as well. And so those would be my two requests. I haven't fully convinced my appointee for the library board yet, but he's very close. So with that, I would accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve both.
Second. Okay, motion by Jared, second by Jen to approve those two appointments. All in favor? Opposed?
Do I need to abstain?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
And
So
just
that
for
is
you-
abstaining.
You should do, you need to, the proper process here is to describe any potential conflict here for the record, being the spouse,
Yep, Mike is my spouse.
and then abstain from voting on that matter.
And even though it's combined with the other one,
We should then separate them out, correct?
Alright, so do you want to withdraw a motion or amend the motion?
Amend the motion just to be all except for that one. And then you can all vote in favor.
So for the parks reappointment.
Right.
Motion to approve the Parks Committee member.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have Jared recommending the parks reappointment with Darren as a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Make the motion to accept Mike for the planning commission.
Second.
Okay, motion by Darren, second by John. And then at this time,
Correct.
Becca will state her.
I'll be abstaining from the vote because Mike is my husband.
And just to confirm, there's no salary or compensation paid for plan commission members, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so there's no pecuniary interest at stake, it's just a appointment to this commission.
And even with that, she will be abstaining.
Correct.
Okay,
That needs to be identified for the minutes.
okay, thank you. Everyone else in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks to both of them for service to the community and helping out with these committees. Very much appreciated. Next is, we have it listed as presentation and discussion on room tax commission annual report with Dave Anderson as the presenter. Dave is out of town today. I did, in the meanwhile, since our last meeting, meet with the chamber, with the president and vice president. And we reviewed this report that you'll see in tiny print in front of you. one of the pages is in tiny print. And I think Tony might be able to pull up the electronic version, so those of you in the room will be able to see what we're looking at. So the simpler page talks about the percentage of room tax that comes from Washburn versus Bayview and what that total amount is. The piece that we're still missing, and we're going to be working on moving forward with them keeping records according to the way we need the information, is we're trying to find out what the percentage of their budget is used for marketing to determine whether or not they are a tourism entity. If they're a tourism entity, then they don't need to spend 100% of the room tax dollars on tourism promotion and development, advertising, those sorts of things. They could use a portion of their personnel and rent and utilities towards that, since their staff would be considered a tourism entity, staffing at a tourism entity. If less than 51% of their total budget is spent on tourism promotion and development, we can, the room tax commission can still contract with them, but then 100% of the room tax dollars would have to be spent on tourism promotion and development. So we just are trying to make that delineation so that we know which of those scenarios we're working with. And either way, because there's better communication going on with the chamber now, they understand that they need to be using more money for tourism promotion and development, since that's what that ordinance was created for. And so that is part of the reason why they have only 2 part-time staff right now instead of a full-time and a part-time, so that more of that money can go towards actually promoting the area. So that's good, we're moving in the right direction, we're trying to get those room tax dollars doing what they're created to do, which is promote the area, which then makes more tourism dollars coming into the area, into our economy, that helps all of us out. And so the second page, which is the tiny print page, because I couldn't get it to print on 2 separate pages.
You showed the wrong one.
Here it is. Oh, are you showing the tiny print page?
Yes.
Okay, if you could just make that a little bit bigger, because we can't see it on this and you can't see it on that at this point. So this, it just gives a breakdown for categories of spending, the way that they have been keeping track of it. One thing that I pointed out to them is that the homecoming dollars should not be in here at all, because we actually give money specifically for homecoming every year, and they do fundraisers for homecoming. So really, we shouldn't be spending room tax dollars on homecoming theoretically. So we'll work through with their with the person who's in charge of their accounting now to set up the accounts for room tax specifically in a way that makes more sense, and get that total budget amount of what percentage of their budget is spent on marketing, tourism, promotion, and development. So at least this is giving us an idea of some things that they've been doing, which is more than they used to. So progress, and it should get even better from here as far as what they're spending that money on. Again, that's the whole reason the state created the ability for us to enact a room tax, is to promote the area as a tourism destination. So we are getting closer to that goal. With that, I will just open it up for questions if anyone has any questions. Seeing none, I think we can move on. Okay. The next item is discussion and action to consider private water and sewer on vacant properties. Anthony Jennings is the petitioner. This is tab 3 of your packet. We did talk about this item briefly at the planning commission. And thank you, Tony, for sharing this background information so that people can kind of understand a little bit better where we're talking about. And again, I don't know if that's something you could pull up possibly on the screen from the packet. Or
Which one?
it's not in the
That's not in
packet.
the packet.
So then, I don't know where you have that document. Is it anywhere that you're available to access it? And then Tony, if you don't mind coming on up to the microphone
You bet.
and,
I got caught in the rain, so excuse my drenched
oh,
clothes.
no worries at all. In fact, you were freshly showered.
I was.
So we have the email that you sent Tony with a brief summary. And if you just maybe wanna
Yes,
give us a little background too.
so there are many areas in Washburn, not just the ones that I have noted on the map. Those are just ones that I've been involved directly with, that are not served by water and or sewer, public and or water and or sewer. Bayfield is faced with the same issue. They call them orphan lots. And they have instituted a process now where they are allowing private well and septic on these lots on a case-by-case basis because they realize they're running out of developable areas. And these lots are lots that could be developed, increasing the tax base while not necessarily supporting the urban services, but that it's overall a benefit to the community to have these lots developed. I've been involved in one sale that failed and one sale that actually did proceed based on the hope that this would happen in the future. The sale that failed is the square in the middle there, in the middle of the page. That's a 3-acre lot with a pond and lake views from the north end of that lot. Could be subdivided into more than one lot. But the closest water and sewer you can see is on the south on 8th Street. And the cost of running sewer and water to that lot, because of what needs to be done, they actually need to replace the street with curb and gutter, replace or update the sewer, the storm sewer system, et cetera. It was, when Scott priced that out with an engineering company, it was $432,000. And that would have only served 2 properties, $200,000 a piece, which is not actually feasible for anybody. So these lots have been condemned to unusability. There's a pole barn on that one that's used for storage. The other one on the left is a 10-acre lot that's just absolutely gorgeous. And you can see the sewer runs up to one corner, but the developable area in that lot is toward the north. And there are ravines and forest that exist between the developable area and that sewer. Even if we could get down to it, it's still like 500 feet to reach that sewer. Everything within 500 feet of the urban service district is required to connect to urban services, but it's not financially feasible to run the sewer the direction it would have to go to connect where it is. And the cost of extending that sewer up 10th Avenue to a point at which it would be financially feasible to connect that lot is also not financially feasible. So by allowing these landowners to have their own private well and or septic, depending on what services are not available, would dramatically increase the tax base in Washburn. Houses rarely are under $350,000, and that's a good chunk of tax money. There are many other parcels in town that are in the same position. I sold one on Fifth Avenue and Sixth Street, sold for $15,000 just to add to somebody's yard, because it can't be developed for the same reason. So, any questions? That's kind of the scope of it.
We did, take a peek at this, like I said, at Plan Commission, and I thought I had a possible solution. With the ability of the city to now include residential properties in a TIF district. However, I actually did some additional research on that since I brought the idea up to him and found that unfortunately those are only for dense development areas. So it may not work for this area. I don't know if you want to say anything else, Max.
So I can comment on this issue that it's been a discussion for years with the city of how do we extend our sewer and water utility service up the hill for revenue for both of those utilities. The city's sewer and wastewater treatment plant was designed with the capacity to treat sewer and wastewater from all of those properties. We need to figure out how to connect them for revenue purposes. That's been a big issue with the city's financial struggles, let's say, for the last 15 years. We thought, so last October, the state legislature passed some legislation that changed TIF districts. Previously, TIF districts could only have up to 30% of the total assessed value in any district be residential value. There's a change in that law that becomes effective in October of 2026 that allows 100% residential development TIF districts. However, we looked into this a little more and we thought, great, that's perfect. It'll allow the city to put this whole area into a TIF district that allows the city then to use the tax increment financing to offset the cost of sewer utility extensions up the hill. Looked into it a little bit more. Unfortunately, legislature has oftentimes happens, develop that based on more urban areas and the needs there, and has very strict requirements for what these residential TIF districts can be. Single or two-family lots, if it's a single-family lot, it can only be 7,500 square feet. If it's a two-family lot, it can only be 1,200 square feet. Maximum width of the lot can't exceed 80 feet. Square footage of a single family can't be more than 1,000 feet, or two family can't be more than 2,000 feet. A bunch of things that don't apply to that area of Washburn where we're looking to extend the sewer services. So that was unfortunate in thinking that new development legislatively would help. But in doing that research, I did find some other new opportunities through the USDA for revolving loan fund grants for extension of municipal utility services for development of undeveloped lots in municipalities with less than 10,000 people. There's both federal grants available that would be a pass-through through the city of Washburn, and the state agency that runs them that does direct grants to homeowners for these types of projects that just started being available in 2025. I talked to the administrator of that program from the state of Wisconsin, and the point of contact from the state of Wisconsin. I haven't been able to contact anyone from the federal project, but said that there have been actually I don't think that they had known of any that had actually been approved. So they didn't have much feedback to say whether our idea here or project would fit or would be similar to other approved projects. But it sounds like from the definition of that program, this is the exact type of situation that would apply to. So that was kind of where I got to here on this request to waive these items. Is we've been looking for years at how to help out the finances of the sewer and water utilities in Washburn. So the council whether to waive that, I don't think that we're out of options yet as to feasible options to extend with these other grant programs.
And then, do you recall, Max, when this ordinance actually went into effect, where the council decided that they wanted to make sure that the new properties did have to connect?
Yes, that went into effect because the city of Washburn received a significant amount of, I wasn't city attorney then, but I know I looked back and did research on that. City of Washburn received a significant amount of grant funding for the upgrades and the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant. And part of that, the requirement for that grant was that we have this mandatory connection ordinance. The required connection if you're within 500 feet or 300 feet, depending on whether sewer or water, for different parts of the city. That question, I haven't looked into whether the requirements of that mandatory ordinance have expired, or whether there'd be any clawback requirement for the funding that we received for the wastewater treatment plant expansion. I think that we're beyond any timeline that would have applied for those grants that we got for that expansion, but I don't have a definite answer to that right now. But I do know that these ordinances on the mandatory connection were required from, whether it's the DNR or the USDA, they were required to be implemented when we got the public funding for the wastewater treatment plant expansion.
To ask a question
Yeah.
along those lines, that was gonna be one of my questions was, you just answered a little bit of why it's in here, and then the second one is the contents of it, because, you know, it's that section that talks about the parameters of what an available utility is. Is that kind of standard at those, or could it be like adjusted?
So those requirements that are in the ordinance, because I looked at this at some point, and I think honestly, Tony, I think I looked at it for the applicability to your house, your property, when this came up on Summit Ave, because that is complete, yes, it borders this, but it's completely unrealistic to connect to city utilities, given the geographical layout of it. And I looked into it then, and these distance requirements were what was required for getting that grant funding.
Okay.
It wasn't that the city of Washburn chose these distances.
Okay,
It
that's
was,
what I
hey,
didn't
this
know
is
if
what
we
you had
chose
to do.
distances or
Yes.
not. Okay.
So that was what was required. I don't know whether we can change them now.
And
Right.
have we in the past, like, not followed these for certain reasons?
As far as I know, no. There have been other requests about, hey, can we
Yeah.
get by this?
Yeah.
Can we do some other development? And as far as I know, the answer has not been to allow private well drilling or at least development of new septic systems that otherwise would have been required. Maybe some maintenance, maybe some updates to septic systems that were borderline allowed, but not any new systems themselves. That's as far as I know.
And my last question
Yeah.
is, there's been some statements that are needed, like, sewer and water and a new road. We wouldn't make a homeowner pay for that. That would be like the city's responsibility, and the homeowner's responsibility would be like that, the connection, and not like a stormwater, you know, so I feel like it may be I'm wrong there, and that was one of my other questions, because like, I wouldn't imagine us putting that on a homeowner, but that's a city type thing.
As required by the ordinances, the cost for extension of city water and wastewater services to any of these properties that are what they call adjacent to, required to be hooked up to them.
Yeah.
The cost of that extension of the utility itself is borne by the homeowner or the developer. The other necessary improvements, I don't know the specifics on the curb and gutter or the stormwater runoff. Those should not be.
That Kluber said that.
Those should not be, those aren't by ordinance or statute required to be borne by the homeowner. They could be specially assessed, but they aren't required to be under these ordinances and under what was required for that expansion of the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, that's, maybe he told you that, but that doesn't seem right, yeah.
So, and I'm wondering, you haven't gotten any more recent quotes, have you?
No, because nobody knows who Scott used for those quotes back then. But this is several years ago, and those costs are probably 50% higher now than they were then. And he said that it was a requirement to redo the whole street, et cetera, because they have to tear so much of it up, because the sewer and water are in the street. And once the street is taken up, you gotta do the storm sewer and repave and do all that stuff, bring it up to code at that time. I thought that was a little significant, but I understand that the city doesn't necessarily have 400 grand laying around to do it either, every time a homeowner wants to connect. That's why Bayfield has instituted some things that can help the process. They got a grant to redo Manypenny, so they ran sewer up Manypenny and they stuffed it into every lot along the way, and all you have to pay now is the connection charge. They coughed up for the sewer. They had the grant for the street. That may be something to consider if there are ever any grants for street replacement. Another option is charge a water and sewer, perhaps a reduced fee, because the homeowner has the expense of providing their own water and their own septic system, but perhaps meter their water and charge them a sewer and water charge in addition to them taking care of their own systems until they're able to connect. Most people are very happy to connect when the services are available. So those are, some things to consider as well.
And I can say, this is one that's not from a absolute legal standpoint, but I know that at some point my brother looked at buying that property on 8th Avenue.
Yes.
And I think he got a rough estimate of 80,000 for just the sewer and water extension, as opposed to the 400,000, which is still 80,000 on a lot in the city. It wasn't feasible to do that. Right. So that's just as a ballpark cost without any of the other city expenses. And then Tony's comment on the having to tear up this city street and other things, that's something where the city is responsible for those costs if it's required to run these utility extensions. That's why it was a bad decision, just for example, the city, when they did the Barksdale extension, they ran a lot of them right under the highway. So if you gotta do any work on it, the city's responsible on tearing up the highway and getting those out there. Now, as we're seeing with the new extensions, better planning, better foresight there, running all of these water sewer utilities still within the right of way, but outside of the roadway construction, so that those costs don't fall onto that homeowner for any of those work. I think it's definitely something that, yes, needs to look into further.
So it sounds to me like we're not able to change any ordinance requirements at this time because we're just not sure if we're literally able to, correct?
I would say, not that we're not able to, but I can't give you a definite answer right now, based on what I have. I will look into this for the next meeting, because I hadn't known that specific question to look into now. There are some other opportunities, I think, that we found for alternative funding that, as we've been discussing, hopefully once we get a full-time city administrator, they can explore those options for offsetting these costs with other grants or other development opportunities. But I will get an answer on specifically the legality of any alternative to this mandatory connection, given the grant funding the city has gotten in the past.
Okay, and that would be ideal, is to get both things, right? To get someone being able to use the property and get them connected to the system, because it is a long-term problem for us. And if we can tap into some of these potential grant funds to help get this done, that'd be great. Let's look into that, so.
And when we have a city administrator, it
Yes.
might be wise to count up how many of these properties exist within the city limits, because there are many.
Right.
And that would be something that, yes, we can't use a new residential TIF district legislation for this. We can use a mixed use TIF district that would include this area for expansion of sewer and water utilities, provided a bunch of different percentages based on equalized value and anticipated project costs for extending it fit within the required ratios that is allowed for these other mixed use TIF districts. So that's something, yes, the consideration of this needs to see an estimated full cost of all of the expansion where it could be developable. And then the potential property tax gains by developing these lots. And then that, once we get that answer, we can say, is TIF financing out of the question totally, or is it still an option for this whole project versus one property to the other?
And we don't have to wait until we have a whole new administrator in place. I do have Scott Rasmussen, our interim periodic administrator, will be coming 2 different times. Once in the next couple weeks in June, and then again in early July. And this is one of the things that I'll be talking with him about, and he's very familiar with, he's really great with finances and tips and all the good things. So, so we'll be continuing the discussion. I appreciate you bringing it up for discussion, because it just helps give us a reminder that this needs to really get taken, we need to take a look at this and try to solve it.
Finding that engineering company that was willing to do those estimates would probably be a great idea as well.
Sure, or finding someone else.
Someone else.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyone else have questions on this?
I
Jared?
just got some, if we start making exceptions on these ones, then all the way up the road, we'll never start bringing water up the road. And once we make one exception, what's to say if somebody comes to us, well, you made an exception there, why'd you make it? Why can't you make it for me? And then pretty much it's our plan of trying to connect all these spots. I think we do just gotta hopefully develop it a little thicker where we can work at some of these great things going on. But I just don't like to shoot ourselves in the foot if we just start opening it up.
And that's why at least for the grant requirements of this ordinance, there's no possible exceptions. The way that when we got the grants for expansion of the wastewater treatment plant, there were no possible exceptions. It was required that our ordinance says shall connect. No exemptions, no way out, doesn't matter what it is. So that's what I need to get that about whether that's even legally allowed. Right now, it's not under our ordinances for any exceptions.
Tony, a question for you. Do you know with Bayfield's exceptions, were they working under a grant as well? That they had to put in these types of ordinances within the city?
Yeah, they have the ordinance. It was impossible to do this in years gone past with former administrations or public works directors, et cetera. It's Joel Weber is the new public works director, and somehow he's managed to make this happen. And it's, they're sort of forced to because they don't have a lot of developable land. And the cost of making these properties developable is beyond anybody's ability. And so they're taking it on a case by case. Talk to, and I asked him if that would be okay if Washburn got a hold of him. He said, most definitely. And he could help explain the whys and wherefores that they actually changed and started doing this.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know how much of this type of developable land they would have to work with. And I wanna say, part of the exception that they made was due to a ravine situation.
Well, in old military road, et cetera, they have no water up there because it's too high. They would have to create a pressure loop to provide water, which at the time that we had this discussion about some lots up in Bayfield, that was 4 or 5 years ago. It was $300,000, and it would have served a handful of properties, which again made it cost prohibitive. in that situation, if there was grant money available, or there was money available with the city to put in that pressure loop, then those people would have to connect. So the money would be there. So even though may make exceptions when it's available, you have to connect. That's one of the criteria. So it's not just, well, you made an exception here. They have good reasons for making their exceptions on certain properties. And they have the criteria, can't be within a certain distance of well, blah, 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 blah. So I think there's a lot to learn from talking to them about why they chose to make these exceptions.
Thank you. It sounds like there's more research to do and work to be done, but we'll keep it on the burner.
I appreciate that, and anything I can do to help, just let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on to our next item, which is presentation and discussion on public administration associates regarding city administrative staffing study. And this is tab 4 of your packet. And we have Sean Murphy online, I believe.
Good evening.
Hi, Sean. You're behind me, so I can't see you, but.
And Scott Rasmussen's also able to participate, so he's also on the Zoom call.
Very good, thank you, welcome to both of you. So this is the completion of the study that we had hired a PAA to take on, looking at our organizational structure here in the city, since we've been having some trouble finding an administrator in the existing way that it was structured, rather than trying to fill that again with that structure. We took a look at the whole structure of our administration here at City Hall, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys to take us through.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And again, thanks for the opportunity to help Washburn out in the wake of their departure as city administrator. It was a good opportunity to, as the mayor mentioned, to step back and kind of look at the overall City Hall staffing structure. We did get a tremendous amount of help and assistance and input from your city staff while they were essentially filling in the gaps created by the departure of the city administrator. So really kudos to the city's staff for providing ongoing support and assistance to both us and the city while this was ongoing. And looking at it, we did it kind of in steps and phases, and I've got a presentation we'll go through. But we wanted to kind of first get a baseline by looking at what the city staff is doing currently in their roles and responsibilities after the departure of the city administrator. So we updated all the current administrative staffing position descriptions, including the assistant administrative, the assistant city administrator, the treasurer, and then the administrative assistant position as well. Because they also took on some additional duties, as well as essentially their position descriptions had kind of morphed over time, and they took on some responsibilities and duties that were not listed in the description. So what you have in the study before you is both the updated current positions and some proposed position descriptions. So I'm going to share a little slideshow presentation that kind of highlights some of the findings and conclusions of our study that we conducted. See if I can get that pulled up. Is everybody seeing that okay?
Yep. Yes.
So obviously looking at this, we kind of touched on a little bit about the goal and the purpose of the study, which was to evaluate City Hall staffing, their workload and service delivery. We assessed the administrative structure and the position alignment within each position, and by looking at their position descriptions, we looked at the types of functions and responsibilities that each of them were carrying out. And we also compared with alternate organizational models. We looked at some other municipalities to kind of compare how they are structured and as opposed to Washburn's. And then we recommended administrative structure that supported more long-term sustainability. And we did this in the context of, essentially your current funding for your staffing. We did this under the proviso that we did not want to add additional staff, but kind of redistribute the workload, appoint essentially the priority tasks that within the existing framework of your city hall staff, and really focus on integrating some of those functions and responsibilities. So there was cross-training availability as well as backup support. So in the current administrative environment, obviously the city administrator position is vacant, and that position's workload was redistributed amongst the current staff. The clerk and treasurer functions do overlap in several areas and are kind of disjointed in terms of being placed in and assumed by several of the positions, including the assistant administrator. There was a need for a stronger coordination, accountability within each functional area, as well as some succession planning, and then again that backup support and cross-training opportunities. Some of our key findings that we noted, and this doesn't always apply to just Washburn, but essentially administrative silos, kind of occur when there isn't a central administrative manager, if you will. So the absence of the city administrator, your staff stepped forward, took on the roles and the duties and the responsibilities that were left behind by that vacancy, and they did their best to provide some shared backup and support to complete those and essentially keep the organization moving forward. However, there, as would always occur, there's going to be, without a centralized kind of coordinator, some silos and some loss of integration between those positions. So role ambiguity creates essentially some of those accountability challenges. When new things come up that were done by the administrator, who should do those, end up getting shared, or whoever kind of steps forward and takes it on. Cross-training opportunities obviously were very limited. Their shared administrative services would improve resiliency in terms of the organizational ability to rise to new challenges or unexpected tasks that would come their way, which does seem to happen on a frequent basis in city and local government. And also, updated position descriptions better reflect their operational needs. So looking at that first step by updating their position descriptions, we wanted to kind of identify where there are some essentially misallocated workloads. Maybe there's one position that was taking on a lot, other positions that there was some opportunities to essentially redistribute some of that. So we did kind of look at several different organization formats. Obviously, this is your current organizational chart that we pulled from your reference. It provides for a city administrator that also has clerk duties and functions and responsibilities within their position description. They also have zoning administrative authority within that position. There is a separate treasurer position that also takes on many of the clerk duties in addition to the treasurer duties, but it's essentially operates currently without the administrative or city administrator as a combined administrator or a city clerk and treasurer position. Obviously, under that is the assistant city administrator, which took on a lot of additional responsibilities in terms of support to the boards, commissions, and committees in the absence of the city administrator, and the administrative assistant role that supports those three full-time positions is a part-time position currently. However, that did flex up to a larger role in taking on some more of the administrative functions, some of the bookkeeping, accounting functions, the billing functions from ambulance utility, as well as cemetery. So there was a redistribution of a lot of the responsibilities amongst the current staff. This is an overview of the four options, the staffing structures that we reviewed. And I'm actually gonna just quickly go through this and then come back to this. I wanna get into the four staffing structures that were included in the study, give you a sense of that, and then come back to this to essentially provide that. But essentially, the first staffing structure was more this traditional, had separate functions. There was limited integration. There was some of that administrative silo functionality within the traditional model. And yet, so the second option we looked at was more of a partial integration, trying to provide a merging or consolidation of some of those functions and sharing of resources and workload amongst the positions. And so there was a bit of more efficiency that because of that sharing of administrative functions. The third function we looked at, we called the fully coordinated option, which was essentially an integrated administrative model under a city administrator position. And then the fourth one was actually developed from your staff and talking together. That was more, we call it an augmented, essentially made the administrative role into a full-time community development director role. And then there were essentially, there were 4 full-time staff positions as a result of that one. So we did look at these 4 options. I'll go into the 4 ones in a little bit more detail. So the first one option was the traditional option, and you can see we did kind of color code some of the positions that were either modified or they're a new position. The yellow are modified positions that are currently in your organizational structure. The blue ones were essentially new ones that we are proposing. So the first one of the traditional is a modified city administrator position that essentially stripped it of its clerk responsibilities, the city clerk responsibilities. And then it also stripped him of the zoning responsibilities. Those 2 main functions, the clerk responsibilities were placed in a city clerk / treasurer position, which is a common role among smaller municipalities across Wisconsin, a combined city clerk treasurer position. And then a community development director position, which essentially took on the zoning, the planning, economic development core structure of the city administrator. This does not mean that the city administrator is not involved in those functions. Obviously, all 3 of those would work in coordination with each other and back each other up. But it would essentially be the primary responsibility for these individual functions. And so by creating that community development director position under this one, it was intended to prioritize the zoning, the planning and economic development functions within that position. And then the city clerk and treasurer positions were housed under that one position, which is a combined clerk treasurer position. And this, again, desegregated from the city administrator. The city administrator role, because of the fact that it does have a lot of operational and the strategical management responsibilities, does not normally include city clerk duties and responsibilities. That model is not a highly sought after one or often visited one throughout Wisconsin. City Hall staffing. We kind of looked around. There was a few that had clerk duties within the administrative, city administrator function or city manager function, but very few, and they are not heavily sought after when you're recruiting to fill those. And so for those reasons, we kind of looked at a separate function of trying to integrate these a little bit more. And that came up with option 2, which is what we call the partial integration option. This one created the city clerk position as a standalone, but it included essentially oversight administrative coordinator duties within that position. It remained the city treasurer position remained. However, it was modified to take on several of the city clerk duties. As well as providing support to the economic development function that was included in the community development director. So essentially, the zoning, economic development, board support was all included in the community development director position in this model or option 2. Those 3 full-time positions would function as a more integrated approach in addressing the statutory requirements for financial oversight, clerk responsibilities, as well as economic and zoning responsibilities. Kept the treasurer separate on that one because, again, there's always a desire on overall objective to essentially provide some oversight, but segregate the functional duties of the financial oversight and management of the city in one position. And all of those 2 positions then would report to the city clerk, administrator, coordinator. The administrative coordinator function of the city clerk would provide some personnel administration, hiring, firing authority in consultation, obviously an oversight and approval with the city council, but it would provide some more of the day-to-day administrative coordinated that is normally found in the city administrator role. Administrative assistant position was modified in this option to include more of the, similar to what she's doing now in terms of taking on more of the oversight and the payments, accounts, oversight has been ambulance and utility functions, as well as providing board support, putting together agendas, taking minutes, things of that nature. And so that, again, retains the 3 full-time positions and the partial position administrative assistant. The third option is the fully coordinated one. And here we did reinstitute the city administrator position and left the zoning essentially responsibility within the city administrator role. We created a separate city treasurer position, which also had HR responsibilities or personnel duties, and then a separate city clerk, deputy zoning administrator position. This provided some segregation of those statutory required roles in terms of separating, again, that financial oversight with the regulatory oversight, but yet providing an economic development and administrator responsibility within that city administrator role. This provides essentially a more integrated approach within these 3 full-time positions. Similar to what you have now, but essentially a redistribution of some of the responsibilities. Namely, the city clerk responsibilities were stripped out of the city administrator role. The zoning, planning, economic development were left in that position. That is a more frequent, I guess,